Hello and welcome, everybody. Yeah, it's Devara Krasniansky from Adai. I'm working together with the Crown Heights Jewish Community Council. I'm very grateful for the grant that we got from the City of New York. It's given to us by Matthew Eugene, our council member from Crown Heights. Tonight we're starting our Shalom Bias Week, and we're very excited about that. We're spending a week talking about preventive ideas for healthy and strong marriages. And so if you're looking for any of the previous events, you can check out adai.org/past events. For tonight, if you have any questions, you can send us an email or at info@adai.org, or you can use our anonymous form at adai.org/ask-anonymous form. So for tonight, the first of the series of the Shalom Bias Week, we have Rabbi and Mrs. Helana, Rabbi Pinney and Helana Herman of Raleigh, North Carolina. They're shluchim there for the past 28 years. In addition to their active shlichus and family life, they travel for speaking engagements on the topic of marriage and relationships, and they are certified Imago educators, and we're very grateful that they're able to speak with us tonight. Helana is a professional life coach and works with women and couples in person and over Skype. And on many occasions, Rabbi Pinney joins the coaching sessions that Helana has with couples to give them male perspective. So thank you both, Rabbi Herman and Helana. And before we get started, can you just tell us how you got into this in the first place?
Yes, we are happy to. But before we do that, we want to thank you, Devari, and Adai for this opportunity and for all the amazing work that you do. People have shared with me that literally, saving lives. And so we just want to say thank you. And Pinney wanted to say thank you to everyone else for joining.
Yes, absolutely. It's a tremendous thing that you take the time to join these kinds of conference calls to help your relationship. It's one of the things that we don't have instructions for, and it's always good to improve and to learn more about things.
So it's our anniversary coming up. Hey, Thomas.
And actually, when we were introduced for the very first time, it was Rabbi and Mrs. Helana and Pinney Herman. So
true, at our wedding, my brother made the announcement, and he said that. So, Devar, you're in good company. So our 29th year anniversary, Mr. Shem, is coming up in a couple of weeks, and so it's also special for us to be on this call with you. So we have a personal journey and a story of how we got into this, and that's what we wanted to start with tonight. For the first 10 years of our marriage, we felt like we had a decent marriage, and we had a good marriage. But there were frustrations, and we didn't know how to navigate them. We did not know how to manage conflict. We did not have tools for this, and we found ourselves repeating the same patterns over and over again without really getting anywhere, and it was extremely frustrating. We did try reading different things, but we hadn't found the thing until...
I remember actually somebody telling me, whatever you fight about the first year of marriage, you'll fight about the 25th year of marriage as well. And but then we found something.
and I'll just give another example from a personal, life. In our own relationship, we would react differently to conflict. I would overreact and want to talk about it a lot, and Pinney would shut down and not want to talk about it. And when we found Imago, and we learned about it through a workshop at the Kinnas Hashluchais a number of years ago, we heard Rabbi Shmuel Stauber speak. Olav Shalom, he passed away, and he was an incredible educator and speaker on marriage, and he shared Imago. And after that, we decided to go to his 2-day workshop and train for our own lives and our own marriage. And so we're sharing a lot of what we learned there. But after we started implementing and seeing the changes that could occur and actually really feeling like our relationship was transformed, and we literally felt like we went from Gullus to Geula in our marriage, that's when we tried to teach it to other people, but we didn't really have the tools to teach it, and we got excited when we found out that there was a training that we could take. And we went to Washington, D.C., and we became certified Imago educators, and we were able to teach this to others. And I want to give credit to Rabbi Shlomo Slatkin, who is an Imago therapist from Baltimore, and he works with couples as well. And he wrote this amazing curriculum that we get to use, and it's called Couplehood as a Spiritual Path. And he wrote it for the Jewish community. And so we're very happy and honored that we get to use that to teach couples. But what we found is that most of the time, people do marry their opposites when it comes to conflict. Like and in an Imago term, I'm the hailstorm, like there's a big thunderstorm and the hail is pouring down. Or they also call it the tiger. And Pinney is more of a turtle, where when there's conflict, he retreats in his shell and he doesn't want to talk about it and he tries to protect himself. So those two types of individuals usually marry each other.
Very often, yeah, for sure. And so tonight, what we would like to cover is, number one, the most important ingredient for a healthy relationship. There are many important ingredients for a healthy relationship, but we're going to look at sort of the most fundamental or the most foundational ingredient for a healthy relationship. We're also going to explore the purpose of conflict. There's a reason why we have conflict, and it's in order to help our relationship. We're also going to look and try to understand the three stages of relationships and what they go through in their development. And finally, we will share a tool that can help you transform conflict into connection. I'd just like to add, one of the things that really excited us about Imago is that there are so many concepts in it that are from Torah and certainly from chasidus that really speak to us. And one of the most foundational components is that you married your bashert. Obviously, there are times where things go wrong and there's no way to reconcile. But very, very often, we have issues and there are things going on. And what Imago says is that that's exactly where you need to be. That this is all about reconciling and growing and transforming your relationship and transforming conflict into connection.
In fact, one of the titles for the talks that are given is called Incompatibility is the Grounds for a Perfect Marriage. We're going to be sharing tips and tools tonight, and I have many handouts to share, and it would be my pleasure to share. So I'm going to say at this point, you may text me at 919-637-6833, 919-637-6833, either text or WhatsApp me, or you can email me at mrstoralife@aol.com, mrstoralife@aol.com, or coachingwithhelana@gmail.com. That's the better one. COACHING with WITH and then another H for my name, HELANA @gmail.com. So let's talk about the most important ingredient for a successful marriage. Are we still being recorded?
Yeah. Oh, people are coming on. That's so interesting. Okay, go on. Go on. I'll cut this out.
So before answering that question, what is the most important ingredient in a successful marriage, I'd like to just take 5 or 10 seconds for you to think about, what do you think the most important ingredient is? I'll give you a second to think about that. Given our experience, time's up, given our experience working with groups, I'm guessing that some of you thought of the word respect or trust, love, kindness, honesty, good communication, and I'm sure a whole host of words.
And it's just a funny story. I spoke for the Weinsteins at their Shabbos table for alumni, and at this table there were 9-year-olds and 60-year-olds and all the ages in between, and there are about 30 of us, and they put that question out there to the group, and they said, and we're going to challenge you to try to find a word that is the most important ingredient for a good relationship, but try not to repeat the other person's word. And believe it or not, there was such wisdom in that room. 30 different words were used, and even the 9-year-old came up with a brilliant word. I can't remember what it is offhand. But nobody came up with our word, the word that we learned through the Imago tools. So we want to share that with you now. So Imago says all of those things are important, respect and trust and love and kindness, but there's a word that when you have this, you have all of those. And this word is safety. And when I first heard that, it was surprising. I was like, what's that mean? I mean, we assume that everyone is safe, we don't mean physical safety. That isn't, we're assumptioning. We're having that assumption already. So yes, of course, physical safety. But we're talking about emotional safety. We're talking about a relationship where you don't have to walk on eggshells around the other person, where you can share with your spouse how you feel, and you don't have to worry or be concerned that they're going to use this against you or respond negatively based on what you shared. There's a lot more to it, but you want to add anything about that?
Well, look, we learned that anger is considered to be like avodah zarah. And it's an important concept. And obviously there are times in a relationship where couples are going to get angry with each other. It's a given. It's going to happen. But the way we get angry and the way we express our anger is either in a way that can help and can heal, or chas v'shalom, it can be like avodah zarah. And so, but we need to understand, how do we relate to that in a very practical way? How do we practically apply that to our daily lives and to our relationship, our most important relationship? So one of the things that we learned when we started studying Imago is that there are three entities in a relationship. Obviously, there's the husband, the wife, and Hashem, obviously. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is you have the husband, you have the wife, and then you have what we call the space in between, which is the relationship. Because the husband is an individual, and the wife is also an individual. And they're not exactly the same. They may have different viewpoints. They have different perspectives. They have different experiences. And that's okay. But there's a common component which they share, which is their relationship. And that's what we call the space in between. And so we either have the ability to help, to nurture, and to heal that space in between, or chas v'shalom, we can rupture that space in between by using criticism, shame, blame, anger in a negative way. These are all ways that we can chas v'shalom rupture that space in between. One of the examples that we give is from the Aron. The Aron is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest place in the world, and there are two kruvim on top of the Aron. And Mefarshim explained that it represents male and female, husband and wife. And there's a space in between. And we just read a couple of weeks ago that how did Hashem communicate with Moshe Rabbeinu? Mi bein shnei hakruv, from in between the two kruvim. So that space is a very, very holy space. And what we have to consider is, how do I nurture that space? How do I make that space special and holy and connected and filled with love and compassion and all those kinds of things? How do I contribute to that space and make it a very, very special space?
And it's a curious thing. How is it possible that there is such a high divorce rate? I mean, I've been to many weddings. I'm sure you have too. And I've never seen an unhappy chassan or kala. I haven't. Have you? No. How do we get from this euphoria and this joy to tragedy and trauma? And there's such a high divorce rate in the United States. It's over 50%. And in Dallas, it's 65%. And we know that it's not the case in the Muslim world, but we have to ask ourselves, how many marriages are thriving and fulfilling and really joyful? And hopefully a lot more than that statistic. But it's creeping in for us, and the work that you're doing with the information on domestic abuse and violence is so important. And what we're here to share is preventative care. Let's get to the couples before, at the earliest stages possible. And under the chuppah, we see a chassan and kala. You think there's two people, but really there's four people. It's not just the beautiful kala in her white wedding gown and the chassan in his kapata and his hat. No, it's more than that. She's not just coming as her mature bride, but she also has the little girl that she's bringing with her that comes with all of her hopes and dreams and her hurts as well. and she's just hoping and waiting for that this is going to be like, the best life that she could ever imagine. And he also comes. He has a little boy that wants to get his needs met, and he has his stuff as well. And so when we don't realize that, there are times where we trigger each other and we may hurt each other, not just the person you see in front of us, but also the little girl, the little boy that's there inside. And what we get to do in our marriage is we get to heal each other. It doesn't mean like you're each other's therapist, but you can actually learn through the process of healing each other's hurts and frustrations from the past even. And we wanted to share a metaphor with you. Imagine that, well, to start off, just to say that, when Pinney would come late and he didn't call me, I would flip out, and I would have a very strong reaction, like he didn't come home for a day. And it was really embarrassing, and I had no idea why I would get so upset. And I would tell myself, you're not going to get upset this time. And there I would go, blow up again. And I had no idea why. It was so confusing until I learned this metaphor, that imagine a person broke their arm, and they have amnesia, and they have no clue or recollection they broke their arm. I come over to them, and I take my elbow, and I nudge them and say, hey, how you doing? In the exact spot where they broke their arm. What do you think's going to happen?
You're going to scream bloody murder.
And they're going to think I did it.
And they're going to think you think, hey, you broke my arm.
Exactly. But if the arm wasn't broken and I said, hey, how you doing, and I took my elbow and I nudged it into them, it would feel fine. It wouldn't hurt at all. So what we're saying is that, yes, I did something, but I only did 10%. 90% occurred before he even got on the scene. So, that's a metaphor that helped me understand and took the blinders off, so I started to have some sense of what was really going on here. And just to say that, in Parshas Vayetze, Yaakov thinks he's marrying Rachel, and then he finds out it's Leah. And, we can think like that in our marriages. We think we're marrying, he thinks he's marrying Rachel, and then a week, a month, 18 months go by, and he's like, this is Leah. I didn't sign up for this. Okay, and the same thing is with Yaakov. We think we're marrying Yaakov, and he sometimes acts like Esau. So what happens here? Well, there is a clue we can share with you about the 3 stages.
So there are these 3 stages in relationships that Hashem intended for us to experience. And it applies not only in marriage, but it also applies to other situations, a new job, starting a business, when a girl goes to seminary. The first stage, the first experience is one of euphoria. They're just so excited. This is so incredible. This person is going to, in many cases, marriage, this person is going to complete me. We complete each other's sentences. I mean, this is just heaven on earth, and everything is perfect and wonderful. We call that the euphoric stage. We might call it the romantic stage. Following that stage, and what they say is that can last up to roughly a year and a half, roughly 18 months, that you can be in that kind of stage. And that's where, the chassan and kala, they sort of disappear, and they're in la la land, and you don't hear from them, and they're just walking on air. It's in a totally different place. And they've just done studies on the brain, and there's actually, it's almost like they're on drugs, the dopamine and endorphins that are released during that stage, and you're literally dealing with someone who's under the influence. But at some point, that stage ends, and it's supposed to end. And we enter what's known as the power struggle or the conflict stage. We just getting ready for preparing for Gimel Tammuz, and so in Shul this past Shabbos we started learning the Maimer of the Atla Tetzaveh, and there the Rebbe talks about the concept of chasidus lamor, that the olives are crushed, lamor, not just to give light, but to be a source of light, and that through the conflict stage, through the struggles that are going on, it's chasidus. You feel crushed. You feel like, what happened here? What's going on? Did I make a mistake? What's happening? And really, it's intended. It's an intended stage so that we can reach our full potential. We can reach the next level, which is not necessarily the euphoric stage, but rather a stage of conscious love, of enchantment. And it's not to say the romantic stage doesn't mean that's the only time that we should be romantic. We should always be romantic, even in the midst of a power struggle. We should still be romantic. That's just the name of the stage. But hopefully we get finally to the conscious love, or also known as the enchantment stage. And so, in a sense, the romantic stage is supposed to end, so we can enter this conflict stage. The romantic stage kind of lures us into some kind of false reality. But its purpose is so that we can reach our full potential. It's a catalyst for getting us on the road to growth and healing.
Can I say something about
Sure.
I want to say something about the third stage of the conscious love. It's so amazing. It's like taking the blinders off. It's accepting your spouse for who they are, even with their warts and even with their faults, to be able to say, I see you and you're allowed to be different from me, and you can have your own thoughts and desires and dreams, and I can have mine, and we can, the Rebbe speaks a lot about this. I think the new book called My Story, I think there's a story in there about it, or Here's My Story, but the Rebbe encourages many couples I've heard about from stories on Shalom Bayis issues to encourage each other for their life's passions and their life's goals and dreams. And that's what the third stage is about, conscious love, that we can accept each other for our differences and still see each other and be present and navigate things that come up as they come up without letting it, get us all unraveled. Well, and when you're in the third stage, it doesn't mean you never have conflict, but it's much less. Like you kind of dip into the conflict and then you come out of it much quicker.
Right.
And it doesn't unravel you as much as it used to. Mm-hmm. What would you want me to say?
Yeah.
The bracha after Yishtabach is really incredible, because when I daven, I found it that we have this bracha Yotzer Or, and it's bracha Hashem Elokeinu Machelam Yotzer Or Uvorei Choshech V'Yisei Shalom Uvorei Es Hakol, which means that Hashem, who formed light, that's the romantic or euphoria stage, and creates darkness, to me that's the power struggle stage. And the third stage, who makes peace and creates all things, that's when you make peace between your differences and you're in the third stage of marriage. So when you say that bracha, you can remember the three stages of relationship.
Exactly. And conflict then is really a yerida l'tzerech aliyah.
Okay.
Yes.
Imagine that, you know how you go, if you're ever by the ocean and you see people trying to find treasures in the sand, they have one of these long sticks with this metal detector at the edge, and they're going, you can hear like, no, and all of a sudden it goes ding, 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 and they found gold, right? Or some kind of metal. So that's how it is with human beings as well. We have, as if our brain walks around on our forehead with a computer chip. And this computer chip is searching for its Imago, which means mirror image. A person that has the positive and negative traits of their parents or primary caregivers, and they want to marry someone that has those traits subconsciously because they want to recreate different things from their childhood, frustrations and pleasurable experiences, and this time they want to grow from it and mature in a mature way. So
again, not chas v'shalom that we're judging parents. I mean, any of you who are on the phone that's a parent, that you can never always get it right with your kids. And so we're not chas v'shalom putting parents down or bashing them in any way, shape, or form. It's just impossible for a parent to respond to their child's every need exactly the way they want it. And from the child's perspective, called das Tachten, if you will, it can cause a lot of frustration for the child. Whether it's right or wrong, it's what they feel. And so when we get married, we're looking for that person that embodies a lot of those traits. And they may not be the same exact traits as our parents. So some people might say, oh, well, this person, is not at all like my parents. But nevertheless, I'll just give you one example. Someone who may have a parent that's angry, okay, and might be display anger in a very open, revealed, emotional way. Well, there's another way to display anger, and that is by retracting into yourself and by shutting down and shutting off and not speaking. And that's anger, just in a different way. And so that's who we're looking for. We're looking for our Imago. And that's why we get triggered, because we're confronting an issue that we've been confronting since our childhood, way before our spouse ever showed up.
And sometimes the person isn't like your parent, but their job may be. Okay? It manifests in different ways, and it's even been shown by certain studies in Imago that if you don't marry someone like your parent, you will provoke the other person to act in ways so that you can recreate this scenario so that this time you can get it right. What do we have to?
Father's a doctor, a surgeon. And surgeons sometimes are called at a moment's notice, and, you had a plan, you're going to spend time or whatever it is, and the surgeon has to leave. So there's no way Helena was ever going to marry a surgeon, right? She marries a rabbi, which is the same thing without a Porsche, right? And because we're also on call constantly, and so it recreates a similar dynamic.
So what's really fascinating about this whole process is that you are either stretching to meet the other person's needs, and by doing that, of course, you're making them very happy, you're healing them, and it's sort of like helping them make their dreams come true because it's the love that they're yearning for. At the same time, while you're doing that, yes, you're being a great spouse by putting yourself aside, but that's not the only thing that occurs. What's really happening is that you also benefit from this in a very important way, in a way that Hashem wants you to, because you are becoming your best self. You're becoming whole because you are now getting in touch with a part of yourself that's been waiting to be perfected, waiting to be polished. And I'm going to give you an example. We have a couple that we're working with in our coaching practice, and the wife makes the request of her husband. Also, she has a stuck with time. She deals with that too, just like we do. She makes the request of her husband to come on time, and if he's going to be late, more than 10 minutes late, he should text her or call her and let her know. So when this occurs, and he does meet those needs, so he's making her very happy. He is healing her from a childhood frustration of possibly having an unreliable parent or an unavailable parent. But at the same time, when he is stretching to meet her need, and it's not so natural for him to do so, but when he does this, he gets a huge benefit. He's not only a good husband, but he becomes his best self. He's developing a part of himself that's been waiting to be perfected, which is to be a punctual, on-time person, to be menschlich in the way when it comes to time management and reliable. And what's really interesting is that when he takes a turn and he asks his wife for things that really are important to him, the exact same place that she's asking, he actually asks for the other side of the coin. He'll say to her, all I want from you is to cut me some slack and give me the benefit of the doubt. And so when she is able to do that, when she's able to give him the benefit of the doubt and cut him slack, she's healing his frustration, which might possibly be, having a critical parent. And what that's doing for her, though, while he's very happy and he's finally getting his needs met, the most incredible thing happens to her. Because what is it that's waiting to be uncovered for her? Each frustration has a treasure waiting to be uncovered. For her, perfecting herself or improving herself is that she may be type A, she may be a little bit neurotic, she may have some anxiety or anxiousness. And when she works on herself to meet his needs by being more flexible, she becomes a calmer person. She becomes a more relaxed person and a person that has flexibility and accepting and non-judgmental. And really, that's what she wants. She doesn't like when she's anxious. She doesn't like being rigid. So when she meets his needs, she learns how to become more flexible and reasonable. And so when we face conflict, it's actually a bracha in disguise. It's Hashem's way of giving us an opportunity to grow.
Other element of the conflict stage is that the Maila all of a sudden becomes Echsorim. Whatever you thought about the person, this person is so intellectual. Now all of a sudden, that intellectual person is, why is that person so intellectual? They're so unfeeling. Or someone is so easygoing. That's the Maila. And then all of a sudden, when they get into the next stage of conflict or the power struggle, that Maila, all of a sudden, instead of it being easygoing, that person's irresponsible. Or the outgoing and fun person that you were attracted to, all of a sudden, it's like, does the person ever have an off button? Can you ever shut the person off? Right? They're going 24/7. And so the Maila itself becomes a chsarim.
I was just going to say a story about us that I was thrilled, and I looked for a person that was going to be easygoing and flexible, which Pinney is. And then at one point, I was like, can't you be type A just for an hour? Just for 1 hour, I want you to be type A. So the same thing that attracted me then started to grate on my nerves. So it's your turn.
Yeah, so how do the turtle and the hailstorm communicate in a way that is safe, that fosters closeness and connection, and allows them to move from the power struggle or conflict stage to a conscious love and enchantment stage?
Could you explain a little more about the turtle and the hailstorm? I don't think you really explained that.
Yeah, okay. So in the relationship, very often, it's not always like this, but very often you have one person who's known as the maximizer. That's known as the hailstorm. And when there's an issue that's being faced, the person wants to talk about it and talk about it some more and then talk about it again and has a hard time letting go of it. And it just becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger deal. And then, very often, the other spouse is what's known as a turtle. They try and hide it. They try and run away from it. They retract into their shell, go into their man cave. Whatever it is, that's the minimize. Or woman cave, absolutely. Not in our case, but, and that's the minimizer. And so each one deals with conflict in a different way. One is maximizing, wants to talk about it. The other is trying to minimize and not talk about it at all. And very often in a relationship, those two get together. And what's fascinating is that sometimes in one relationship, let's say a husband and wife, let's say the wife is the maximizer and the husband is the minimizer. But then in a different family relationship, the wife who is the maximizer in the spousal relationship, she might become now the minimizer. She might be the turtle in a different dynamic, in a different relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do these two communicate? In our case, Helena wants to talk about it, and all I want to do is, pull the covers over my head and not talk about it. And so Imago has really this foundational tool, and it's called the dialogue. And it's a three-part step, or a three-part activity. The first part is not unique to Imago. It's called compassionate communication. It can be called active listening. One of the interesting things, if you just watch people talking or a group having a conversation, one person's talking, and very often the rest of the people in that group are basically waiting for that person to stop talking so they can say what they want to say. So they're only really half listening to what the person is saying because they really just want to say what they want to say. And in the Mamar of the Pinney Rebetzin, the idea of Haskes Ushma Yisrael, the difference the Pinney Rebetzin writes between head, to hear, and dead head, to truly listen. And that's the first step and the first component in the Imago dialogue, where you're really, really listening and really hearing what the person is saying. And you do it in a way where you actually mirror back, you actually reflect or repeat back what the person is saying. Sometimes, and especially in the beginning, it can seem very stilted because the person's literally saying the same exact thing back to the person who said that to them. But one of the things that we find when we work with couples very often is that, I'll give you a ridiculous example, the wife might say, the sky is blue. And the husband has a really hard time repeating that. Now,
only if there's something that's hard, that's a conflict.
If it's in a conflict or something. But it just, because it's our nature is not to truly listen and deeply listen to what the person is saying. And so the first step is to mirror back, just like a mirror is a reflection of what's staring into the mirror. It's the same thing. You are literally mirroring back, you're repeating back what the person is saying. Once you get good at it, maybe you paraphrase a little, but that's a little later on down the road. Then come the next two steps. The next step is to validate what the person is saying. And the validation might be, and we're going to be demonstrating a dialogue soon, is to say, well, it makes sense you'd want to tell me this because, yes, this is what happened. That is the fact. So let's say, for example, you came home late, and so you can mirror back and say, it makes sense you want to tell me this because I did come home late. Now, the reason I came home late might be because the Balabas just offered me $100,000 and I had to speak to him for a while. But that's irrelevant. The fact is, I came home late. And so instead of just saying, well, I was very busy and shutting the person down from expressing what they're experiencing, you actually encourage them to explain themselves and to develop what it is that's going on. And then later on, you'll get a chance to explain what's going on with you. But the kind of conversations that unfortunately happen with, well, you came home late and I was making, we'll do this soon. I was making dinner and everything else. And the husband says back, well, if I wasn't working, you wouldn't have enough money to make the dinner. So there. And then you just go back and forth. And it doesn't really work out so well when they have that kind of conversation. And so the second step is to validate, to say, yeah, it makes sense you want me to tell me this because, that is what happened. And then the third stage is to really show that you've listened because you're gonna show some empathy. And you're going to say, and I imagine that you must feel, or that you might feel, thank you, that you might feel angry or upset or resentful or whatever those feeling words might be, sad, mad, glad, whatever it might be. And so those are the three parts to the Imago dialogue. It's not rocket science. But what we found over the years that we've helped couples, it is a little bit harder than it seems. And it takes a little while to get used to it.
Before you even start a dialogue, you actually ask for an appointment. You say to your spouse or the person that you want to do this with, is now a good time for me to share a dialogue with you? And if it's not, you need to honor that, and then the other person is highly encouraged to pick a time that is good within the next, as soon as possible, like a few hours if possible, not more than a day, because then it's really not honoring this whole process. So, is now a good time? And if they say no, but in an hour it is, okay, so in an hour you're going to talk about this. And there's revolutionary studies of the brain over the past, even 5 years, there's new research coming out that's phenomenal, understanding the brain. And one of the things that they saw was that when someone gives unsolicited advice to someone else, the pain part of the brain is activated. So when you start spouting at people your opinion and your advice without them asking you for that, it actually causes them pain. And we have adult children. Our youngest is 15, and we started to do this with our own children. Like, instead of just telling them what to do, and especially your children that are married, your adult children, you say, I have some thoughts on that. I'd love to share them with you. Would you like to hear what I have to say? What I think about that? And they'll say yes or no. If they say no, then you keep your mouth shut. But most of the time, they can't last more than 10 minutes without going, okay, what were you going to say? But no, they'll come back, and when they say yes, they want to hear, then they're actually ready to hear. And we have seen with ourselves, with our own marriage, and also with our kids, that they'll actually sometimes take the advice because it was done in a way that was respectful. And I see myself with Pinney that when I used to just tell him what I thought and tell him what to do, he resisted and he resisted and he resisted. And with this tiny little tool that I started using, and I just say, I really have some thoughts on what went on in shul over there. Can I share it with you? He almost always says yes, almost. And it's a completely different experience. So when you ask for an appointment, it's also sort of like asking permission before you just spout out the conflict. So, and the other thing we need to share is that when we learned this years and years ago, 18 years ago, we learned that the dialogue was used for frustration. When we trained to become educators, we learned that, and they actually tweak the program because they do research and they tweak it as the research comes out. This dialogue needs to be used also for positive things, for appreciation. When you appreciate each other and you use the dialogue in the 3 steps, when you're appreciating each other, now this mirroring and this dialogue tool is not just causing pain, but it's being used for positive. And what we have found, this is very powerful. We try to, at the beginning when we were doing it, we did it a lot more. And as you get good at this, you may not do it as often. But we try to do appreciations for each other at least once a week. When at the beginning they say to do it daily to get out of the power struggle stage, the conflict stage. But when we do this, at least try to do it once a week. When we want to share a conflict, we won't start with a conflict. We always start with an appreciation first. We each say something we appreciate about the other. And what it's like is, imagine you're in a room with a stone floor and you fall down on the stone floor. That hurts. But if you put pillows all along the floor to pad it and then you fall down, it doesn't hurt so much. So when we use the appreciation before we share a conflict, the conflict sometimes disappears before we even share it, or when we share it, we're able to say it really calm and really loving.
One of the great things about it also, again, taken from chasidus, is that it's me'ach shalat ala lev. In other words, you're angry about something, but it doesn't mean that you therefore have the right to scream and break things and do whatever to do whatever it is that people do when they're angry. What's happening here is I'm angry, and now I need to make an appointment to share why I'm upset. And so automatically your intellect is controlling your emotions. And so the inappropriate expressions of anger sort of fall away because you're in charge of your emotions. It's a very, very powerful thing. There's a couple that we're working with. The husband and wife have an ongoing frustration with each other. And when they started doing this program, and we were Skyping with them, and the husband they went through this dialogue, and the husband said, "This is the first time," and they've been through this issue many, many times. For 10 years they've been married, and they've been going through this issue for most of those 10 years. And the husband said, "This is the first time I really feel that my wife heard me." And that was amazing because he's told her this issue hundreds of times. And from her perspective, she said to us that it's the first time that she was able to listen to what he said without feeling either fear or feeling defensive, or that something's wrong with her or things like that. And that was just an amazing thing to see that. And even though they were in the middle of a dialogue that was about a frustration, they were still able to smile. And that's a very powerful thing. So our seichel controlling our midas is very, very powerful.
And also, some shluchim that we were working with said to me, this is living bittul. I mean, we always talk about bittul, and quieting the ego, and how do we do that? And when you actually pause, take the time, you are living what you're actually living bittul.
Exactly, yeah. So now comes the part where we're actually going to demonstrate a dialogue. We're going to do it briefly because I know time is of the essence, but we just want to show you a little bit of what that's like.
Now a good time for me to share a frustration with you through the dialogue.
Yes, it is.
And the other thing we teach is to take a moment to say a tefillah, a kapitel tehillim, whatever it takes, because
to center yourself.
Center yourself, and we need Hashem's help in this, obviously. Okay. So this is our typical one. So we'll just use that.
In our first rodeo. Huh?
Okay. So when I made dinner and you agreed that you were going to come home at 6 o'clock and we were going to have dinner with the family, you didn't come home at 6 o'clock.
So what I hear you saying is that you made dinner and we agreed that I'd be home at 6 o'clock and I didn't come home at 6 o'clock. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there more about that?
Yes, there's more. There's always more.
There's always more.
The more is that I was waiting and I worked really hard and you didn't even call and you didn't let me know and you came like a half hour late and the kids were waiting. We were waiting. We didn't know if we should eat. Everybody started going crazy and I didn't know what to do with myself.
So what you're saying is that I was late and I didn't call and it's 30 minutes go by and the kids are waiting and you're not sure, should we eat, should we not eat? I guess all pandemonium broke. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there more about that?
Yeah, a little more. So I just felt like I don't feel like cooking anymore because I just went to all this effort, and you said you were honoring that we were going to eat together as a family certain days a week, and I just was like, I want to give up. I just don't know. I don't know.
So what I hear you saying is that it makes you feel like you don't even want to bother anymore because we said we want to eat as a family and spend that time together, and you feel now like you're just ready to give up. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there more?
Not right now.
Okay. So that's the first stage. That's the mirroring. The second stage, the second part of the dialogue is validation. It makes sense you would want to tell me this, Helana, because I did come home late. And we had agreed on certain days that today I would be home at 6 o'clock, and I wasn't. And we do value eating together as a family and spending time with our kids during dinner. And I didn't come home, and I didn't call. Is there more?
No, it's good. Thank
Okay.
you.
So that's the validation part of it. And then comes the empathy. The empathy goes something like this. Again, it's just feeling words. I imagine that you might feel angry, resentful, misunderstood, alone. Okay, right.
So thank you. So I say.
So you say, thank you
for listening.
And I say, thank you for sharing. And that's how it goes. That's how the dialogue works. Again, in the beginning, it can sound somewhat stilted. It's a whole new way of communicating. But if you stick with it, at least in our experience and the experience of many of the couples that we work with, it really changes. It's a game changer for them. It really, really is.
I have a handout on this. I'd really like to share with anyone who wants. You can put it up on the thing too, but I'm going to give you again, I don't know if everybody heard this, but my phone number, text me, and I will give it to you, 919-637-6833, 919-637-6833. coachingwithhelana@gmail.com, and my name is Ana, Helana. So, yeah, Pinney wanted to share something else. So the other thing is, when you heard us say, is there more, that's a fascinating part of the dialogue. Because most of the time when you're in a conflict, you never, ever want to hear more. The person is trying to shut the other person up. No one ever says, is there more? And here, you're saying, you want to hear more? Is there more? And it's extremely satisfying and comforting to be asked, is there more? Instead of, hurry up and finish so I can say my part. Or
Exactly. Because the fact is that a husband and wife are supposed to be on the same team. They're not in separate corners coming out to duke it out. They should be rowing in the same direction. And so if one of them is experiencing a frustration or whatever it is, it behooves the spouse to hear it and to do whatever they can to alleviate whatever the frustration is that they're causing.
And another point I want to make is that we switch from who's right and who's wrong. That I have to be right. We change that. That is completely eliminated in Imago and in doing the dialogue. We change it to becoming curious, and we take it and we want to be connected. It's about seeing the world through the other person's eyes, being a witness to the other person's experience. Even if Pinney came late because he rescued someone from a burning fire, that still doesn't take away from the fact that I'm hurting, that he came late, and that he wasn't, he didn't call. So I had my own experience with him coming late. And even later I may say, wow, that was amazing, and I'm so happy that you were able to save that person's life. But at the time, I still had my experience. And this process allows each of you to have that.
And again, to express it in a safe way where you don't get defensive. One of the one question that people often ask about this dialogue is, okay, well, when do I get the person to change and do what it is that I want? And that's not exactly, there are elements of Imago that deal with behavior change requests, and that's a whole different thing that we're not going to get into tonight. But the point of the dialogue is that when you really hear the person, when you really listen to them, and when you really empathize and validate them, it just changes the whole dynamic, and real connection is taking place. And I can't say that it's you don't even have to say anything more than that, because sometimes you may have to. But it just gives the person who, let's say, the offending party, if you call it that, it gives them a different perspective than just trying to put that wall up or trying to defend themselves. It just opens them up to understanding what it is that the person's going through. And I think it just motivates you to really try and meet that need, to try and be better. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. And the stages in the relationship, and just going back to the 3 stages in the relationship, it's not so clear-cut either. You can go back and forth between you're in the romantic stage and the euphoric stage, and then there's a little bit of conflict. And then you're in the conflict stage, and hopefully you're getting into the enchantment stage. You're getting past it. But then you go back into the struggle, and that's still something that we deal with, especially when it's really late at night. People told us when we first got married, never go to bed angry. And I think that is one of the worst pieces of advice ever, because nothing good happens after 2 a.m., and probably even 1 a.m., and you end up saying things you probably didn't mean to say and certainly should not have said, and it just prolongs the issue. So you can just say, listen, let's take a time out, let's sleep on this, and we'll resume tomorrow, and everything hopefully will be resolved then. Yeah. So, Devari, has anyone...
so a question came in. I have a few questions that came in. In the dialogue, why didn't you say, I'm sorry? I feel like without the word sorry, I don't feel like he apologized, and I don't feel like, if I'm the one saying sorry, I don't feel like I've been forgiven. So can you address why don't you say I'm sorry?
Wow, that's interesting. I don't know. I never really thought of that. I think that, well, look, sorry is a good word, but it's also a very easy word. And I think that through the dialogue, you're getting to a much deeper perspective. And it doesn't mean that after a dialogue that I won't go to Elena and say, I'm really sorry.
Right.
But again, sorry is, you came home late. Oh, sorry. Let's see. This is, it forces you to really roll up your sleeves and really deal with the issue. But and again, for different people, different things work different ways. And for another couple, saying sorry may be extremely important, and creates a certain closure that you need. And if that's the case, that's fine. It's not. This isn't Torah Sinai exactly, and you can adapt it to to fit your particular needs and your unique situation.
And sometimes you use this dialogue back and forth for a few days, and at some point you can say, and I do have a request. I really would like an apology, and you can say that in your dialogue as well. Mm-hmm. But what I find fascinating is that, let's say my complaint is that Pinney wasn't listening to me, or he didn't give me time. So when we're doing a dialogue, guess what I'm getting? His undivided attention, so as I'm sharing it, I'm starting to feel connected, and the love will actually flow, and I will not only feel angry and frustrated and sad, I start to feel a little, joyful,
so bad after all.
Joyful and connected, and when we're done 5 minutes later, I might feel like completely connected because he just gave me his undivided attention, which is what I was complaining about. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's the person who sent the question, so I'm hoping it definitely felt like it answered the question. Another question that came in.
Anyone who wants can ask us questions directly as well. We're open to anything like that. I'm saying not now, but after the call.
Right, sure. Another question that came. Firstly, if anyone has any questions, you can send it to www.ask-anonymous-question. Another question that came in is, what if my spouse doesn't want to be part of this dialogue? Is there something I can do on my own?
Yes, good question. Amazing question. I'm glad they asked. So, yes, we do believe that you can do this without the other person. It will take longer, but you can have success. It's an extremely important question. I'm so glad they asked. But you may have to do it in a savvy way. If you're not permission and you're not in the same model of doing this, so then instead of mirroring back word for word, the person might go crazy from that. You may just say, so what I hear you saying, and then summarize it, or just mirror in your head and just validate the person. I have heard many people tell me that has caused a lot of, connection and helped a lot. And then the husband's like, wow, you're really listening to me. And, there's another book that I really highly recommend, How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. I know you were asking on the WhatsApp for ideas of books. It's an excellent, excellent book. And what did you want to say, Pinney?
I was just saying that any time that you can stop what we would call the downward spiral, when the communication breaks down and everybody's just sort of angry with each other and just going back and forth and one-upping each other, like, well, you came home late and we had, we missed dinner, and you say, well, the only way you had dinner is because I work for a living, and well, I'm the one who takes care of the kids, and that's harder than working for a living, and then, it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and that whole thing. Anyone who changes that dynamic automatically is going to change what goes on. And again, it may not happen overnight. It might take 2, 3, 4, however many conflicts, but eventually there's going to be a different dance here. It's going to work a little differently.
And also, when you start validating the other person, whether you're in a dialogue with them, knowing or unknowing, something really interesting happens. And imagine saying to someone, is there more about that, when they don't even know you're doing this on them. I mean, you can use this in the workplace. People have been, we did this years ago with people here, and they said, I want to use this in my work with my customers and my employees. And just being heard, the other person starts to soften. I know with Pinney and I, when we do it, yes, we're both agreeing to it, but while I'm telling him all this stuff, I'm frustrated, all of a sudden, towards the end, I start saying all the stuff he was going to say in his own defense. I start saying them. I'm like, but I imagine you might have, had a really good reason for that or something. Or I start seeing his point of view without him even having to say it, if he's really listening. If he's fake listening, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. So, yes, you can absolutely use this. Of course, it is better if you can get the person on board. And if you keep the relationship safe from your half, sometimes the person will get curious and say, wow, what vitamin are you taking?
The other thing is, just trying to, if there is someone who your spouse respects, whether it's a Rav or a Mashpia or, a friend, whomever it is, that again, without breaking confidentiality and those kinds of things, or maybe the two of you can go speak to somebody and you say, listen, I want to try something different, and would you be willing to do that with me? And sometimes when you say that in front of a third party, it's harder to say no. But
so this particular topic is what Rabbi Tal will be talking about this Thursday, is how to enhance your marriage from without the help of your spouse to start, at least. So that's Rabbi Tal's topic, so he'll expound on this much more. Last question is, what happens after the dialogue? does the original problem get solved, or how does the problem get solved? You addressed that somewhat, but you wanted to take it again. Does the original problem get solved, or just everyone feels heard?
It's more organic. It's a more organic experience. I know that's a very,
New Agey.
New Age word, but you can use, there's another tool we teach. There's not time for it tonight, but it's called the behavior change request. And the other thing is, this is not a one-day thing. You may share this conflict over the year. I mean, you may use a dialogue for the same thing for a year. And the thing that's interesting is that if you create a marriage vision, which is the first step, one of the first things we do is we create a vision, and each person writes what they want in their marriage. And then they combine it and they read it often. They start wanting to make changes in that direction. And then there's a tool called the behavior change request, and you can ask for your needs in a very specific way, because people are used to just complaining. And then when you say, okay, so what do you want? They say, I don't know. You should just figure it out. And no way are we mind readers. That's not fair. So you learn how to break down and ask for things very specific, and it's called, you use the SMART acronym, and we don't have time for it tonight, but like very time specific, like for the next 2 weeks. This is what my first request to Pinney when we did this work was, for the next 2 weeks, when you come home, please find me and spend 5 minutes talking to me. And Pinney, he didn't do it perfect, and when I would get angry, that would make it worse. But if he did it twice instead of 3 times, and I forgave him that one time he didn't do it, and I acknowledged him for when he did, that frustration went away. It melted, and it's gone.
It's a non-issue.
It's a non-issue now. So there are tools that can be used to create change, but when the requests for change are done with nagging or angst and desperation, it's very hard for the other person to meet the needs, and that's why using dialogue and creating safety is the soil for all of this to occur. It's like the soil for the garden to occur.
Exactly. Any other questions?
So, no, we have to cut it here. Can you please repeat your information if anyone wants to reach you directly?
Yes. So my phone number, where you can text me or WhatsApp me, 919-637-6833, 919-637-6833, and my email is either MrsTorahLife@AOL.com, that's MrsTorahLife@AOL.com, or coachingwithhelana@gmail.com, and that's COACHING with WITH, and then another H for my name, HELANA. You got to do the ANA or it won't work, at gmail.com. And Pinney wants to just end with a bracha, if that's okay.
Yes. And so just thank you, everyone, for coming on the call. And if we can help you in any way, Helena gave you the contact info. And just give you a bracha. We're in Parshas Kairach, and it's all about machlokes. And there's machlokes l'shem shamayim, machlokes that's not l'shem shamayim. And hopefully that the conflicts which are bound to happen in a marriage, it goes without saying, it's going to happen, that they should be done in a manner of l'shem shamayim. It should occur in a way that and that you're able to resolve it in a way that the Shekhinah speaks, that Hashem speaks to you, between from that special space that you and your spouse create together. And you should have a Yom Shalom Teves filled with love and connection and abundance and joy and everything your heart desires. Thank you very much.
Amen. Well, thank you. And if you want to hear the recording for this call, it's at adai.org/past-events. You can also find the recordings of all the other calls. And you can check out the blog at adai.org. There are several important articles about marriage, dating, and addressing domestic abuse. So if you have any questions, definitely send us an email at info@adai.org, or you can use the anonymous form at adai.org/ask-anonymous question. Tomorrow night's call for Shalom Bayis Week is with Rabbi Mendel Lipsker. He's talking to newly married men about questions that you that you thought to ask, didn't think to ask, or what wives hope that their husbands would hear. It's for newly married men, but it's really for anybody. So you can join us then tomorrow at 8:45 Eastern, the same call number at the same time. So we'll see you tomorrow. And good night. Thank you.